Good afternoon, my fellow fanaticals. You are listening to the CSBS Sports Edition, and I am your host, Chris Stanton. And yes, I still know fanaticals is not a word. We have a very special show for you today because today we have our first ever guest on the CSBS. Yes, later on today we are going to be having Josh Liss, the sports director and morning anchor of WBBM Radio 780, and he will be here for a 10-minute interview, so stay tuned for that. But before we get to that, we do have our weekly topic, Calling Out the BS. As you know, this segment is one in which we look back on the week in sports and we call out things that are just not sitting well with us. If you want to chime in and call out something, or if you just want to voice an opinion on any sports topic, feel free to call at our number, 630-534-0779. That number again, 630-534-0779. Or you can Twitter me at the CSBS. And this segment of Calling Out the BS is brought to you by Arby's. Try Arby's giant 2-for-6 mix and match deal. Choose 2 from the beef and cheddar and the roast beef, each with a 5-ounce serving of roast beef. Only at participating Arby's. Sliced fresh, great taste. Now, as we said, Calling Out the BS, weekly segment that we have to call out things, and I've got a few things that we need to call out. And the first one is the biogenesis, and not towards baseball, but towards all the other leagues. See, there was an article in The Atlantic written by Alan Barra, and in that article, he reports that the report about biogenesis listed over 100 athletes in that report. Over 100. And guess what? They were not all in baseball. They were in track. They were in football. They were in college football. They were in hockey. They were in the NBA. They were in all walks of life in the sporting world. But baseball is the only one to seem to be doing anything about it. No other league has taken any steps to investigate any biogenesis allegations. And there's a couple things that really makes me mad about this one. First is their obvious avoidance of responsibility. Take the UFC, for example. Dana White, the president of the UFC, when asked about this very issue, says that it's up to the state commissions to do drug testing. It's the government. They have the best. We leave it up to them. Yeah, well, state commissions also like to have revenue brought into their state. And if they start looking too harshly, what's to keep the UFC from going to other states? So obviously, he's just trying to scoop that whole thing under the rug. The other thing that really bothers me about it is, as I said, that no other sports are being held accountable. We lambast and villainize the Major League Baseball and Bud Selig, but they're actually making a good faith effort to weed out all the illegal drugs, the PEDs. And yet, leagues like the NBA and the NFL, they don't even test for HGH, let alone all the new stuff in this biogenesis scandal. No one's holding them accountable, and shame on us as consumers for not pointing to the other leagues and wondering, wait a minute, what's going on in those leagues? This can't just be baseball. How come nobody's talking to Roger Goodell? How come nobody's talking to Dana White and to any other person in charge of their league? You know, somebody get in David Stern's face. He's always good for a soundbite. That's the first one. The second one, speaking of David Stern and the NBA, is the coverage by the sports media of LeBron James considering the NBA Players Association president's spot. Who cares? Quickly, name the last NBA PA president. It was Derek Fisher. I know a lot of people probably don't know that, and if you did, you only knew it because the league was on strike last year and his face was all over the TV instead of the NBA games. But LeBron James said he was just considering taking the position. He has since declined to run for it, but man, oh my God, LeBron James is considering it. This is headline news. It's got to be on the top of ESPN. It's got to be on the top of SportsCenter. It's got to be on the top of Sports Illustrated, Fox News, what have you. Everything. And it drives me nuts. There are a lot of great stories out there in sports. We've got the football season starting. There's some great things happening in baseball. Miguel Cabrera could win a second consecutive Triple Crown. And yet, the headline news, LeBron James thinking of running for league president. Wow, that is just god-awful reporting by the Sporting News. So that is another thing that I'm calling BS on. And third, For all you football fans and reality fans, you know the show Hard Knocks. I'm actually a fan of the show. I think the way it's done is great. It's actually the most reality-based of all reality TV, so who knew? But there's one thing I don't like. They're covering the Bengals this year for the second time, which is great, and the Bengals in this offseason signed James Harrison, the linebacker that was released from the Steelers after they didn't want to pay his salary. And Harrison, I'm going to be up front here, I've never liked. I don't like the way he carries himself. I don't like the way he treats people. I don't like the way he plays. But he is a talented linebacker, and he was slotted to be the starting linebacker for the Bengals. When asked about the role of Hard Knocks in camp, he responded that they don't deserve to be at the camp. Nobody in the media has put in the blood, sweat, and tears. No, they just paid a lot of money to be in the camp. James Harrison has got to realize his role in society right now, specifically his role in sports. He is the face, the guy on camera. He is just another cog in the wheel for the NFL. If he got hurt today and his career ended, not a thing would change. Ratings wouldn't be adjusted. The Bengals would probably still make the playoffs and will probably still be favored to win their division. If HBO were to stop filming Hard Knocks, the NFL would lose a main revenue stream and a different segment of the population that they're broadcasting to. Because let's face it, a show like Hard Knocks can actually bring a couple together. You got a guy who's a sports fan, you got a wife who's a reality TV fan. They get together to watch Hard Knocks. It's a good show that's got a lot of upside to it, and James Harrison is a person who is biting the hand that feeds him. He just can't keep his mouth shut.
Know your role and shut your mouth.
So, and listen, he's well entitled to his opinion, but here's the other thing that's really bugging me about James Harrison. Because he's a great athlete, people let him get away with it. And this is not just a problem with James Harrison. This is a problem all over sports. You've got a person who is acting out, but because he's a quality athlete or a quality entertainer, you let them get away with it and nobody says anything about it. The fact is, this guy is arrogant, he's demeaning, he's pompous, and he's a pain in the butt. And people need to stop putting up with it because he is not that valuable. Not to the league, not to his team, and it just becomes insulting at the level that he is carrying himself. I remember in an interview, the reporter that was covering him, his workout regimen, referred to him as a warrior. Now, I know that term gets thrown around a lot, but at the time, we were still involved with Iraq. Well, we still are, but we were still in the midst of the whole Iraq situation and our invasion of it. And to have an article in a major magazine and to refer to him as a warrior while we have soldiers over in Iraq is insulting. And the fact that he refers to himself as a warrior is insulting. So, as The Rock so aptly put it, know your role and shut your mouth. But moving on and sticking with football, we're going to cover some training camp stories around the league. Talk about some different teams and what we've been noticing so far this year. And this segment's brought to you by Phil's Sports Bar and Grill. If you're like me, then you're always on the lookout for a great place to watch the game. The best place I've found is Phil's Sports Bar and Grill, located on the corner of Prairie and Burlington in Brookfield, Illinois. Phil's features daily specials, 10 TVs, and complimentary Wi-Fi so you can follow your fantasy leagues. And on top of all that, Phil's has a great atmosphere and sensational food. Check out Phil's Sports Bar and Grill today. Now, around the league and training camp, there's been a lot of things happening. And so I'm just going to cover some highlights of what's been going on. First, we'll talk about the Green Bay Packers. They had a very big blow to their team a couple of weeks ago when they lost Brian Beluga, their left tackle for the year. He has some sort of undisclosed leg injury. I do not have the details on that, but I believe it was a knee or an ACL tear that kept him out. And he is by far their best offensive lineman. And when you lose a lineman of his caliber, it's going to affect any team. But considering the Packers give up more sacks than just about any other team in the league, especially over the last 3 years, Aaron Rodgers has been the most sacked quarterback, then you've got a major problem when your best offensive lineman goes down for the year. And especially since the Packers have stated publicly that they're going to commit more to the run this year. Aaron Rodgers is probably the best quarterback in the league right now, but he throws way too often and gets hit much too often as well. And the Packers wanted to emphasize the run. So with their first pick, they drafted Eddie Lacy, quick, powerful running back who is almost certainly going to start for the Pack this year. But losing that left tackle, that's really going to hurt both the run and the passing game. So we're going to see how that's going to affect them in a division where they got to play 2 games against the Bears that feature Julius Peppers, Lance Briggs, and Henry Melton in their front 7. They've got to play 2 games against the Vikings. They've got Jaron Allen and Kevin Williams on that line. And they got 2 games against the Detroit Lions that have Ndamukong Suh, Kyle Bosch, that new rookie Ziggy Ansah, and Israel Adonijah. That is going to be some tough sledding for the Packers to overcome, even though they do have so many weapons on offense. Over to New York with the Giants, they're looking good this year because they have a healthy Hakeem Nicks. With all the talk about Victor Cruz and his contract extension, people forget what a great weapon they have in Hakeem Nicks, the big-time, tall, great-handed possession receiver out of University of North Carolina. He rarely has been healthy ever since he was drafted, but for the first time in the past several years, he's coming into camp 100%. And you've got 2 weapons like that for the Giants, for Eli Manning to throw to, Victor Cruz and Hakeem Nicks. I would look for a lot of points to be thrown up. Now, they also lost Osi Umenyiora to the Falcons, and at some point, it's going to be tough for the Giants to replace all this talent that they just let go. But they seem to have done it so far, and their GM is top-notch. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because I don't think they would let a talent like Osi Umenyiora go without the ability to replace him in a pinch. Back down to the NFC South champions, the Falcons. They also have some injury problems, and they lost their starting offensive tackle, Mike Johnson, and he's going to be out for the year with a broken fibula and a dislocated ankle. And that's going to be brutal because they've also got a new running back that they're going to put into the system. But I don't think it's going to affect him too much. He wasn't their starter last year, and it was pretty much an open competition anyway for that spot. And they've got so many weapons, whether it's Steven Jackson out of the backfield, whether it's Roddy White, Julio Jones, Tony Gonzalez. Matt Ryan's got a lot of different avenues to get the ball out of his hands quickly. So I don't think that is going to affect them as much, and I still think they're the favorites to win the division this year. Another team that is going to be looking to repeat as champions is the Washington Redskins. And their biggest benefit this year so far has been the health and return of 3 of its biggest players. That would be, of course, Robert Griffin III, Brian Orakpo, and Fred Davis. Robert Griffin III entering his 2nd year. Obviously, they're going to want to run with him less and have him throw more. And getting a target like Fred Davis at tight end is going to help him immensely, especially for those checkdowns and short passes out in the flat. And then with Brian Orakpo coming back, the Redskins can look to be going from a middling NFL defense to an upper echelon NFL defense because they have talent. Guys like London Fletcher on that team. But Brian Orakpo is a bona fide superstar, and he is an irreplaceable part of that defense. So getting him back is going to be huge. Moving back up to the AFC North is the Steelers, and they've got some interesting things going on in camp. For the past several years, they've been more of a passing team, which kind of goes against what the Steelers have been in the past. But it looks like they're going to be de-emphasizing the pass this year. First of all, they allowed Mike Wallace to walk in free agency and go to the Dolphins. And then they drafted Le'Veon Bell, and he has been looking good. This guy can stop on a dime. He's real fast. If you want to see some of his workouts, check out SportsIllustrated.com. Peter King visited the Steelers camp and did a little postcard on Le'Veon Bell and his training. So I would check that out. But the other thing that's got the Steelers lined up to be a good running team this year is the return of offensive guard David DeCastro. He was a first-round pick by them, and him coming back healthy with this new running back is really setting them up to be a power running team that will once again be relying on its defense. And speaking of runners, the Buffalo Bills have got C.J. Spiller, and their coach has flat out said they're going to run him until he throws up. And that is probably a good decision, because last year he gained over 1,200 yards on just